At 7:45 on the morning of June 1, 1940, Squadron Leader Douglas Bader eased his Hawker Hurricane up to 3,000 feet over the pale gray water off the French coast near Dunkirk. The evacuation below was already chaos. Burning ships, smoke drifting inland, columns of men trapped on the beaches. But the sky above him was briefly empty. Then a Messerschmitt Bf 109 appeared directly ahead. Same altitude, same heading, almost the same speed. Bader was 29 years old. He had been flying combat missions for exactly 4 weeks. 9 years earlier, he had lost both legs in a flying accident that should have ended his career forever. The German pilot didn't turn, didn't dive, didn't react. Bader checked his range, 300 yards. He had 400 rounds in his guns and nothing but open sky between him and his first kill. December 14, 1931. Woodley Airfield, near Reading. Bader had been 21, a rising star in No. 23 Squadron, flying Bristol Bulldogs. Cocky, fearless, talented enough that people noticed, and reckless enough that they worried. Someone at the Reading Aero Club made a challenge. Said Bader couldn't perform a slow roll below 500 feet. Regulations banned aerobatics below 2,000 feet. Bader took off anyway. He entered the roll at 200 feet. The aircraft rotated cleanly at first, then the left wingtip clipped the grass. The Bulldog cartwheeled, broke apart, and exploded across the field. At Royal Berkshire Hospital, surgeons amputated his right leg that same day. The surgeon, J. Leonard Joyce, told Bader's family he would likely die from shock and blood loss. 3 days later, infection set in. They amputated the left leg as well, one above the knee, one below. Bader's logbook entry was brief. Crashed slow rolling near ground. Bad show. In March 1932, the RAF Medical Board reviewed his case. Their decision was final. No pilot with prosthetic legs could meet flying standards. Bader was retired with a full disability pension. He was 21 years old. His flying career was over. For 8 years, Bader worked at Shell Oil Company. He learned to walk again on aluminum and leather prosthetics. Learned to drive a modified car. Played golf with a single-digit handicap. But he never stopped thinking about flying. When Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, Bader began calling every RAF contact he had. Commanders who remembered him from Cranwell, from 23 Squadron. He demanded reinstatement. The Air Ministry said no. Then maybe. Then agreed to a medical flight test. November 1939. Central Flying School. The examiners expected him to fail. Instead, Bader flew loops, rolls, spins, recoveries, clean, precise, aggressive. The chief examiner marked him exceptional. The RAF had no regulations forbidding prosthetic leg pilots, because no one had ever tried. If the medical board cleared him, he could fly. They cleared him in February 1940. His first posting was No. 19 Squadron at Duxford, flying Spitfires. He flew his first combat patrol over Dunkirk in May. Then came June 1st. At 3,000 feet, he fired at the Messerschmitt, missed high. The German pilot continued straight ahead, oblivious. Bader corrected his aim. Fired again. Tracer rounds walked across the fuselage. The canopy shattered. The Bf 109 rolled left and fell toward the channel. First confirmed kill. 2 weeks later, Bader was posted to No. 242 Squadron as acting squadron leader. The unit was mostly Canadian pilots, recently pulled back from France, exhausted, angry, and broken. They had lost friends, lost aircraft, lost confidence. Their equipment situation was worse. No spare parts, no tools, no readiness. Bader sent a blunt message to group headquarters. 242 Squadron operational as regards pilots, but non-operational. Repeat, non-operational, as regards equipment. He refused combat status until the problems were fixed. The parts arrived within 48 hours. By July 1940, 242 Squadron was combat ready. The Battle of Britain had begun. German bombers crossed the channel daily. Fighters escorted them in strength. On July 11th, Bader intercepted a Dornier 17 off Norfolk. 2 short bursts. The bomber vanished into cloud-trailing smoke. On August 30th, he led 12 Hurricanes against more than 100 German aircraft over Essex. His squadron claimed 12 enemy aircraft destroyed. They lost none. Bader's artificial legs gave him an advantage no one had predicted. Other pilots blacked out under high G turns as blood drained from their heads. Bader's aluminum legs couldn't pull blood. He stayed conscious longer, turned harder, fought deeper into the maneuver. By August 1941, he had 21 confirmed victories, fifth highest in fighter command. He was now wing commander at RAF Tangmere, leading 3 squadrons on offensive sweeps over France. The Germans knew his call sign. They studied his tactics. And on August 9, 1941, at 30,000 feet, they were waiting. 9 o'clock hours. RAF Tangmere. Wing Commander Bader climbed into Spitfire MKVA, serial W3185, coded DB. 8 guns loaded. Tanks full. Oxygen checked. 48 Spitfires lifted into the sky. The mission was routine. Cross the channel. Climb to altitude. Force the enemy into the air. Destroy them. At 10:15, they crossed the French coast. Clear skies. No clouds. Nowhere to hide. At 30,000 feet, Bader saw them. 12 Bf-109 climbing from below. He rolled into the dive. Altitude. Speed. Position. The mathematics favored him. He fired. One Messerschmitt erupted in coolant spray. Another disintegrated under a 3-second burst. 2 kills in 90 seconds. Then the situation reversed. For enemy fighters closed from high rear, Bader began his brake turn, and something tore into his aircraft. Metal screamed. Controls failed. The tail vanished. The Spitfire flipped inverted and entered a violent spin. Bader jettisoned the canopy. The wind hit like a hammer. He released his harness and tried to stand. His right leg was trapped. The altimeter unwound. 25,000. 20,000. 15,000. He pulled with both hands. The prosthetic wouldn't move. He made his decision. Bader unbuckled the upper strap, left the artificial leg behind, forced himself out of the cockpit, and pulled the ripcord. The parachute snapped open. The remaining strap tore free. Douglas Bader fell away from his shattered Spitfire, alive. Below him waited occupied France. His left leg hung normally beneath him as the parachute carried him down. His right leg ended at the knee. The prosthetic was still inside Spitfire W3185, falling separately. For miles south of Le Touquet, the aircraft hit the ground 12 seconds later. The impact sent a column of black smoke hundreds of feet into the air. Bader watched it burn as he drifted down through clear summer air. He had one artificial leg, no weapon, no escape kit, and he was descending into occupied France. German soldiers were already running toward his landing point. Bader hit the ground at 11:05. His head struck hard. The world went black. When he opened his eyes, 2 German soldiers stood over him. One was already unbuckling his parachute harness. The other stared at his right side, at the place where a leg should have been. The soldier said something in German and pointed. Bader understood the tone immediately. They thought he had lost his leg in the crash. They had no idea both legs were artificial. A Luftwaffe vehicle arrived 15 minutes later. 4 soldiers lifted him carefully into the back and drove north towards Saint-Omer. The hospital was a converted French schoolhouse. White walls, red cross painted on the roof. Inside, German doctors treated wounded Luftwaffe aircrew. Bader was the only British patient. The examining doctor was a Luftwaffe Oberarzt, a captain. He checked Bader methodically. Minor concussion, bruised ribs, abrasions on both arms. Then he noticed the left leg. He stopped, called for an interpreter, asked questions. Bader explained calmly. Both legs gone. Lost in December 1931. Training accident. The doctor asked how long he had been flying with prosthetics. Since February 1940, Bader said. 18 months of operations. The doctor didn't believe him. No Air Force allowed a double amputee to fly fighters. But Bader's service record was still in his uniform pocket. The doctor read it. Wing Commander, DSO, DFC in bar. Commander, Tangmere Wing. 23 confirmed victories. The doctor left the room. He returned half an hour later, with his commanding officer. Oberst Adolf Galland entered at 1300 hours. Galland was 30 years old, commander of Jagerschwader 26, one of Germany's most experienced fighter leaders. He had 94 confirmed victories and knew Bader's name well. British intelligence reports spoke of an aggressive wing commander operating from Tangmere, but none had mentioned prosthetic legs. Galland looked at the artificial limb, then at the empty space where the other leg should have been. He spoke English well enough to dispense with the interpreter. What happened, he asked. Bader explained simply. Right leg jammed in the cockpit. Had to leave it behind. Parachute snapped the strap. Gallen nodded. He understood. What do you need, he asked. Medical care. Food. Water, Bader said. Then added, a replacement leg. So I can walk. Gallen didn't hesitate. I will arrange it. He asked how to contact the RAF. What message to send? Bader gave him the details. Gallen said he would speak to higher command and left the room. Bader had no idea if the offer was genuine. German officers were usually correct with captured aircrew, but arranging for the enemy to deliver a prosthetic leg seemed impossible. That night, Gallen contacted Luftwaffe headquarters and made the request official. It moved up the chain, through General Major Theo Osterkamp, then General Feldmarschall Hugo Sperl. Finally, it reached Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring in Berlin. Göring had been a fighter pilot in the First World War. He understood the peculiar bond between airmen, even enemies. He approved the request. On August 11th, Gallen sent a message through Red Cross channels to RAF Fighter Command. Wing Commander Douglas Bader alive. In German custody. Requires replacement prosthetic leg. The Luftwaffe would guarantee safe passage for one British aircraft to drop medical supplies by parachute over St. Omer. No flak. No fighter interception. The message specified coordinates and a 4-hour window on August 19th. The message reached Air Vice Marshal Trafford Leigh-Mallory at No. 11 Group on August 12th. Leigh-Mallory knew Bader personally. The request was unprecedented, but also an opportunity. The RAF already planned a bombing raid on the Gosnay power station near Bethune. St. Omer lay only 20 miles away. Leigh-Mallory approved a plan. 6 Bristol Blenheim bombers would fly as part of Circus 81 with heavy fighter escort. 1 aircraft would drop Bader's replacement leg over St. Omer. Then the formation would continue to Bethune. The Germans had offered safe passage for the leg drop. They had not offered safe passage for the rest of the mission. August 19th, 1941. 8 o'clock hours. RAF Wattisham. 6 Blenheims taxied to the runway. Each carried a full bomb load, except Blenheim R3843, coded WVF, which carried something extra. A wooden crate. Inside, a right prosthetic leg, leather straps, socks, bandages, tobacco, chocolate. A note was attached. To the German Luftwaffe commander at St. Omer. Please deliver to Wing Commander Douglas Bader, RAF, prisoner of war. Flight Sergeant Jack Nicholson, 23, from Toronto, piloted WVF. His briefing was simple. Fly to St. Omer. Drop the crate by parachute. Then proceed to Bethune. Expect resistance there. The formation crossed the English coast at 8:45. Fighter escort joined. 48 Spitfires, 12 Hurricanes. German radar tracked them immediately. Galland had briefed his fighters personally. Do not engage until after the leg drop. At St. Omer Hospital, guards moved Bader to a room facing the airfield. Watch, they told him. Your RAF is coming. He didn't believe them. Then at 9:30, he heard engines. 6 Blenheims appeared overhead. Fighters circled high above. Nicholson brought WVF down to 3,000 feet, opened the bomb bay, and released the crate. A small parachute blossomed. The package drifted down and landed beside the runway. German ground crew ran to retrieve it. The RAF bombers reformed and turned southeast toward Bethune. The agreement was complete. Galland picked up his radio. Scramble fighters, he ordered. Engage the bombers. St. Omer was covered. Bethune was not. At the hospital, German orderlies carried the crate into Bader's room and opened it. Inside lay a new right prosthetic leg, better straps, improved fittings. Manufactured by Dudley Brothers of London. The same company that had built his original legs in 1932. Bader smiled. The war, he realized, had just given him back his footing. Bader strapped the leg on. He stood. He walked across the room. The German doctor watched carefully, eyes fixed on the joint, the straps, the way the artificial limb carried weight. He asked if it fit properly. Perfect, Bader said. That afternoon, Bader sent a message through Red Cross channels. Leg thankfully received. 3 words. RAF Fighter Command confirmed receipt on August 21st. But intelligence officers noted something else in the report. Security at St. Omer Hospital was lax. Windows unbarred. Guard rotations predictable. 1 guard per corridor at night. The hospital wasn't a prisoner of war camp. It was a temporary holding facility. Bader noticed the same thing. He now had 2 functional prosthetic legs. He could walk. He could climb. And the hospital had bed sheets, strong cotton, long enough to knot together. His room was on the 2nd floor, 20 feet above the ground. Outside lay farmland, then roads running west toward the coast. The English Channel was 15 miles away. On August 24th, Bader tied 4 sheets together, secured one into the bed frame, and waited until 2 o'clock. He opened the window, lowered the rope, and climbed out. He was halfway down when a hospital worker looked up from a ground floor window and shouted. Guards responded in under 30 seconds. Bader was hauled back through the window at 2:15. The sheets were confiscated. A second guard was posted outside his door. At 7 o'clock, the hospital administrator arrived. St. Omer, he said, was no longer suitable for a prisoner who attempted escape. Bader would be transferred to a proper camp. Stalag Luft 3, 300 miles east, in occupied Poland. On August 27th, Bader was put on a train under armed guard. He arrived at Stalag Luft 3 on August 30th. The camp held roughly 2,000 RAF aircrew, most shot down over Europe. It was divided into compounds, each enclosed by double barbed wire fences, guard towers at the corners, and searchlights sweeping the ground all night. The commandant was Oberst Friedrich Wilhelm von Lindener-Wildaw, a Luftwaffe officer who ran the camp strictly by the Geneva Convention. Food was adequate. Medical care was provided. Mail flowed through the Red Cross. Prisoners could receive parcels from home. But escape was constant. British airmen had been digging tunnels since the camp opened in April 1941, bribing guards, forging documents, sewing civilian clothes from dyed uniforms. The senior British officer was Group Captain Harry Day, who had flown with Bader in No. 23 Squadron back in 1931 before the crash. Day welcomed him personally. Bader announced his intention immediately. I'll escape. Day explained the reality. Switzerland lay 600 miles southwest. Sweden 400 miles north. Poland was occupied. Germany was everywhere. Escaped prisoners rarely made it 50 miles before recapture. Bader listened, then said he'd try anyway. The German guards already knew who he was. The ace with prosthetic legs. The man who had attempted escape 5 days after receiving a replacement limb. Commandant von Lindener decided on a precaution. Every night at 2200 hours, guards entered Bader's barracks, removed both prosthetic legs, and returned them at 6 o'clock. Bader couldn't walk at night, couldn't reach the wire, couldn't dig. So he adapted. He joined the forgery operation instead. British prisoners had built a sophisticated document shop. Rail passes, work permits, identity papers. They needed references, authentic examples, knowledge of German procedures. Bader talked. He gathered information on rail schedules, guard rotations, administrative routines. He helped refine forged paperwork until it passed inspection. In October 1941, a prisoner named Bill Ash proposed a bold plan. Ash had obtained a Messerschmitt cockpit diagram and engine start procedures. A German training airfield lay near Gleiwitz, 150 miles southeast. If 2 prisoners could reach it, steal an aircraft, they might reach neutral territory. The plan required switching places with prisoners assigned to an external work detail. Using forged papers and stolen German uniforms assembled piece by piece over months. Bader volunteered instantly. Ash pointed out the problem. The aircraft likely available, Bf-1090 models, had limited range. Barely enough to reach Switzerland. Certainly not Sweden. And German air defenses covered western Poland. Bader said they should try anyway. On November 3rd, the work detail departed, 20 British prisoners, for German guards. Ash and Bader had switched identities with 2 legitimate workers. Their forged papers listed them as RAF flight lieutenants assigned to road construction. The guards checked documents at the gate. Let them through. They boarded a truck and drove southeast. They arrived near Gleiwitz on November 4th. The training airfield lay 3 miles away. Aircraft were visible in the distance. But when they reached the perimeter, the problem became obvious. No modern fighters. Only Bf-1090 variants. The range wasn't sufficient. Flying west meant radar, flak, interceptors. 2 British pilots in a stolen Messerschmitt wouldn't last half an hour. They aborted. Returned to the work camp. On November 5th, a German inspector conducted a routine audit at Stalag Luft 3. He reviewed rosters. noticed two prisoners missing from Bader's barracks. The switch unraveled quickly. Messages went out. German military police arrested Asch and Bader on November 6th and returned them to the camp under armed guard. Von Lindener was furious. The forged papers were excellent. The security breach embarrassing. Bader was placed in solitary confinement for 10 days. The cell measured 8 by 6 feet. 1 bed, 1 bucket, food twice daily. No books, no contact. His prosthetic legs were still removed nightly. When he was released on November 16th, additional restrictions followed: constant escort to meals, exercise, even the latrine. It lasted 3 days. Then the system relaxed. Too many prisoners. Too few guards. Within a week, Bader was moving freely again, meeting escape committee members, planning the next attempt. By late 1941, 3 tunnel projects were active at Stalag Luft 3. Tom, Dick, Harry, each ran 30 feet below ground, beneath German sound detection equipment. Prisoners dug with stolen tools, shored walls with bedboards, disposed of sand in gardens and latrines. Bader couldn't dig. His prosthetic legs made crawling impossible. So he worked topside, lookout duty, timing patrols, moving documents, coordinating cover. In December, the Germans discovered Tom. Guards flooded the tunnel and arrested 15 prisoners. Dick and Harry remained hidden. Winter set in. The ground froze. Digging slowed. Snow betrayed movement. The escape committee paused large-scale operations. Preparation would continue. Spring would come, and Douglas Bader would still be there, waiting, planning, refusing to stop trying. Forged papers. Civilian clothes stitched from scraps. Railroad timetables memorized until stations and junctions existed only as distances and minutes in his head. By March 1942, the German High Command had reached a conclusion. Douglas Bader was a problem. 5 escape attempts in 7 months. St. Omer Hospital. Gleiwitz. 3 separate escape efforts at Stalag Luft 3 stopped only because German counterintelligence caught them in the planning phase. The Luftwaffe classified him as a persistent escape risk, a man who would never stop trying. The solution was simple: remove him from the system entirely. He was ordered transferred to Auflage 4C, Colditz Castle. Colditz stood in Saxony, 80 miles south of Berlin, perched on a cliff above the Mulde River. Medieval stone, 7-foot-thick walls, barred windows, a 1-to-1 guard-to-prisoner ratio, the highest of any German camp. Men sent to Colditz were not ordinary prisoners. They were repeat escapers, officers who had embarrassed the system too many times. Men considered dangerous not because of violence, but because of persistence. Bader arrived on April 2, 1942. The castle held roughly 200 prisoners: British, French, Polish, Dutch, Belgian. Every one of them had already tried to escape somewhere else. The senior British officer was Colonel Willie Todd, who briefed Bader on the rules immediately. Roll calls 4 times a day, continuous patrols, random searches, random cell inspections. Any escape attempt meant immediate transfer to punishment camps inside Germany proper. And yet, despite everything, Colditz was alive with ideas. The prisoners had built a glider in the attic. Engineers had calculated launch speed, glide ratio, stall margins. The plan was to launch from the roof, clear the river, and land beyond German control. German guards never entered the attic. Too many stairs, too remote, too inconvenient. Bader met the glider team in May 1942. He'd flown gliders during RAF training in 1929. He understood lift, airflow, energy management. He gave input where he could. The design was sound. But the glider wouldn't be ready until autumn. Bader didn't intend to wait. In June 1942, he joined a tunnel project starting from the chapel basement. The tunnel ran 20 feet underground, 40 feet forward, with 8 more feet needed to reach beyond the outer wall. On July 8th, German guards found it during a routine inspection. 12 prisoners were arrested. Bader wasn't among them. He'd been on surface lookout duty that day. The commandant assembled the entire camp. The chapel basement was sealed permanently with concrete. All known tunnel entrances were destroyed. Rations were reduced for 2 weeks as collective punishment. And Bader received special attention. He was moved to a more secure cell. His room would be inspected twice daily, random times, unpredictable intervals. Bader remained at Colditz for 3 years. In that time, he attempted 4 more escapes. None reached execution stage. Every plan was detected early, betrayed by bad timing, informants, or sheer German efficiency. By spring 1945, the situation changed. Germany was collapsing. American forces pushed from the west. Soviet armies closed in from the east. The war inside Germany was nearly over. April 16, 1945. Colditz Castle. Artillery thundered in the distance. German guards began abandoning posts. By noon, only the commandant and 3 guards remained. At 1400 hours, American Sherman tanks from the 69th Infantry Division, 1st Army rolled up to the gates. The gates opened. 200 prisoners walked out. Bader crossed the courtyard at 1430, his first time outside the walls in 3 years. American soldiers stared at his walk. The unmistakable gait. Artificial legs. An American lieutenant asked how long he'd been a prisoner. 3 years, 9 months. Asked about his legs. Lost them in 31. Been flying since 40. The lieutenant didn't believe him until other prisoners confirmed it. Bader reached American lines on April 18th. British liaison officers verified his identity. Arranged transport home. On April 22nd, Douglas Bader landed in England. 3 years, 9 months after being shot down. He was 34 years old. The RAF debriefed him for 2 days, camp layouts, tunnel systems, guard routines, German procedures. Bader gave everything he knew. Then they told him something else. He was famous. During his captivity, the British press had turned him into a symbol. The legless ace. 23 confirmed kills. 5 escape attempts. The man who refused to stop fighting. In June 1945, the RAF organized a victory flypast over London. 300 aircraft celebrating the Battle of Britain and victory in Europe. Air Vice Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory selected Bader to lead it. June 15, 1945. Bader lifted off from Duxford in a Spitfire Mk9. Behind him, 300 aircraft. Spitfires. Hurricanes. Typhoons. Tempests. They crossed London at 1600 hours, roaring over Buckingham Palace, Westminster, the Thames. Crowds cheered below. 5 weeks earlier, Germany had surrendered. A man who shouldn't have been flying at all led the celebration. Bader left the RAF in February 1946. He was 35. The RAF offered him staff positions, training commands, administrative roles. He declined. Returned to Shell Oil, becoming managing director of Shell Aircraft Limited. Flew corporate aircraft. Ran aviation operations worldwide. But his real work was elsewhere. He devoted himself to amputees and disabled veterans. Through blesma, hospital visits, public advocacy. He showed men what was possible. Walked without canes. Let them touch the prosthetics. His message never changed. Disability is only limiting if you accept the limit. In 1954, Paul Brickhill published Reach for the Sky. It became a bestseller. The film followed. Kenneth More played Bader. Millions learned his story, and it brought him back into contact with Adolf Galland. Former enemies. Former aces. They met in London in 1953. Spoke as professionals. Became friends. Appeared together at airshows and veteran events. Proof that respect outlived war. Douglas Bader was knighted in 1976. By 1982, his health failed. Decades on prosthetics had taken their toll. On September 5, 1982, he died of a heart attack after a dinner at London's Guildhall. He was 72. At his funeral, Adolf Galland sent a wreath from Germany. The message read, "A great fighter pilot. A greater man." Bader's legacy was never just numbers. 23 victories. 5th highest RAF score in the Battle of Britain. Wing commander at 30. What mattered was what he proved. That disability was not disqualification. That rules could be incomplete. That a man with 2 artificial legs could outfly men with 4 real ones. The RAF once said he could never fly. Douglas Bader flew anyway, and he never stopped proving them wrong.